Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another session of CommsHero. Just got to say, Andy Barr, legend. Thank you for that session, and Tila for facilitating. But it's now time to introduce Hayat Rachi, who's the CMO for React and Share. And Hayat will tell us more about what React and Share does. There's a fantastic session coming up now, which is titled, It's a Numbers Game. We couldn't have had a session at CommsHero, 47 sessions through the week, without talking about metrics and data. So who better than Hayat to come and give us that? So the session is going to talk about bounce rate, views, impressions, engagement, and more to measure. So lots of stuff that everyone's data mad at the minute. So this is the perfect session if you're into the numbers game. So welcome to Hayat, and I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Asif. Yes, hello everyone, my name's Hayat. I'm CMO here at React and Share, and let me share my screen to get started. There we go. So a bit behind this talk and React and Share. React and Share is a digital tool for digital comms people. And prior to setting up this presentation, I've already assumed that everyone here and everyone that I've spoken to within digital comms has a very strong knowledge of the metrics that is required for the numbers game and for digital comms. So these should be metrics that you might never have considered. So bit behind me, I'm Hayat, and yes, this is me. My mum sent me this photo the other day over WhatsApp, and I was like, I have to use it somewhere. So I'm an economics graduate. I used to have my own company for 6.5 years until I sold it last year. And now I am Chief Marketing Officer at React and Share for the past, I think, over a year now. So thanks, Mum, for that photo. So a question before we get started, because I want to make this as appropriate to everyone in the room as possible. What industry are you in? If you could please comment it in the chat box, and then Asif will join back in and read them out to me so that I can note them down. So what industry are you in? Are you in like NHS trusts? Do you work for a housing association? Stuff like that.
We've got Nick Cullen, who's come in, social housing.
Mm-hmm.
So wait for a few more. And we've got Alice as well, who's a digital marketer. She's in social housing, so works for a housing association. Mark Dory, university. Chris from Carbon Homes, who's a housing association. Serena Clark, housing as well. Sally Gillespie from charity. Francesca Carpanini, NHS Trust. Andrew Gledhill from Broadacres Housing. Jules Loveland, non-profit charity. Emma Wanacott, housing. And health and housing charity seem to be the winners. And we've got Sarah. Are you ready for this one? Aboriginal engagement and also state service infrastructure. So there you go. That's I don't think we'll see that one again on CommsHero. So thank you, Sarah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate that. So I've noted down here the majority would be like housing, there's university, charities, NHS Trust. So I'll try and interweave some examples throughout this presentation that are geared towards you guys. Firstly, I want to kick off with a tiny bit of theory as to the metrics behind how I set up digital comms and how we typically help. This is a theory behind systems thinking, and this is a definition that I pulled off of Google. It's a holistic approach to analysis that focuses on the way that systems constitute parts, interrelate, and how systems work over time and with the context of larger systems. So, for example, a university is not really typically going to disappear after like 10 to 20 years. So thinking about the longevity and the system in which comms is actually dealt to then gear all of the metrics and all of the success towards the actual system of how comms is doing. So it's kind of like differentiating between, okay, how does this campaign give us results right now for this year versus how does a comms campaign give us results consistently as part of a wider system over a case of like 10 to 20 years. So the first metric that I want to discuss is the number of customer service calls and emails. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll know, because I've rammed it down everyone's throats, that I've interviewed over 100 comms professionals over the past year. And Louis, who works at the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham, was a very interesting person that I spoke to, because he actually deals with the metrics of customer service calls and emails. He said a key driver of the work we do and an indicator of how successful we have been is the volume of calls that come into our contact center. These calls cost the organization money, so our aim is to use content to allow as many of our users as possible to self-serve online, freeing up space on the phones for the users that really need to speak to someone. So I actually have a use case for one of our clients here at React and Share, which is the city of Helsinki. So they have a website dedicated to all of the residents of Helsinki, and they have a parking page. The parking was actually disastrous, and they were receiving a ton of calls and a ton of emails about parking related issues. So one of the things that they actually implemented was a set of buttons, which is actually our tool. And once a person clicks, let's say, only somewhat or no, then an open feedback text would pop up. And the question that they would typically ask in order to get the information that's actually usable and actionable is, what information were you looking for on the page? And by answering, you help us develop the site. So a person would write back a bit of feedback. So this is very page specific feedback for this content. And then in the dashboard itself, where the actual magic happens, is this dashboard look and delve into the specific page. So here you can see there's 20,000 plus views for this one page, 148 hours worth of view time. And we have a customer satisfaction score that we calculate, which is actually something that they relay onto their stakeholders. The customer satisfaction score is calculated by how many people say yes to if they found the information that they're looking for, aka was this page useful in why you've come to our website, versus how many actually say no. And that's the ratio between those two. Evergreen, because it actually ranks on Google and it's SEO compliant, and therefore they're getting a consistent stream of people looking on Google for their parking page. The views over time, the customer satisfaction and reaction over time. So seeing if it goes up and down and why, and if there's been adjustments made to that page because of it. But then the audience by engagement. So seeing if they're actually reading the page and scrolling, that's how this is calculated, whether they're actually scrolling down the page or if they've literally just come onto it and then bounced off. And one of the things, metrics that I think is kind of, I just don't believe that the metric works, is bounce rate. So some of our clients have said, oh, because we have a high bounce rate, it means that people have found the information that they're looking for and they're leaving as quickly as possible. Now, this page is all of the quantitative metrics, and it doesn't actually say if bounce rate is actually deeming, we don't know. Essentially, we don't know if people have actually found the information that they're looking for through bounce rate. And this is one look into it. This is, finding out the quantitative element as to why a person is visiting a specific page on the website. But now the qualitative element is the actual feedback from the actual people who are Googling for that information that has landed on your website. And then you can start to see patterns. So for example, I've highlighted here appeal, parking, everyone gets a parking fine once in a while, not me because I ride a skateboard. But appeal here has come up 4 times. And the one time that a map of, a parking area has come up, this has actually been action. So I'll show you. So for example, if this one has come up as part of a good piece of feedback, then you can action it on the page, because you can actually implement a map. And that's what our client actually did in order to reduce the amount of calls and emails that were received to the city of Helsinki. versus the appeal page, like the appeal feedback, which hasn't been implemented yet. So an action point that I've written here is update the page with appeals procedure or a hyperlink to an appeals page. Sometimes if the topic, for example, parking appeals, is big enough, it actually warrants having a dedicated page for that, and therefore it can rank on Google in its own right as well. So hyperlinking to that page, and also to measure the mentions of appeals within customer success emails and calls in the monthly roundup. So there's one thing, the comms team or the digital comms team updating this page, but how are we sure that, what are the measurements behind it? What are the month-on-month measurements? So I've calculated or created a bit of a dashboard for those measurements as to, after speaking to 100+ digital comms people over the case of like a year, what should be used in order to showcase this to stakeholders. So firstly, it would be the volume of calls and emails referring to parking appeals last month versus this month, and really keeping those numbers somewhere, and therefore you're able to see what the improvement is month on month on month. The second is the user satisfaction and sentiment from not only the website but also the social channels. I think everyone here knows that you get a bombardment of comments and just I don't know, complaints over social channels like Twitter and stuff, whilst using this tool actually congregates it and keeps it all in one neat place for strategic improvements. So therefore, you can actually see the customer satisfaction score, the reactions. You don't have to do much work on that. You can like screenshot it. But the third is something that I haven't seen anyone else do. And even though I've spoken to so many people, no one has mentioned this. So this is one of my metrics that I've calculated, which is the potential savings in pounds. So for example, you've done the month-on-month look of what the calls and emails are. Therefore, the customer success person has told you, actually, we've had a reduction by 100 calls this month versus last month. And typically an organization or a CEO, COO of an organization will know what one call costs. So therefore, let's say an arbitrary number of £5, which actually it typically is. I think the approximate within the UK is like £5 for one call received. And therefore 100 calls that have been saved times £5, which is the cost of that, is a £500 saving from only one page worth on the website from the digital comms team alone. So let's say, the person within digital comms has assigned 15 pages for this month. So one page every 2 days to improve and to kind of look at and to see if there are any rooms for improvement. Then from 15 pages alone, the comms team would have saved 7,500 worth, which is very, very interesting in how you can actually showcase what the impact of the digital comms team is on a wider organization goals in terms of revenue as well. So it's not just looking at page views and blah, 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 but actually it's like getting down to the nitty gritty of what the metrics behind the digital comms team is and how it actually implements or impacts the wider organization as a whole. So one example that I want to share from a conversation that I had with Darren Caveney, the founder of Comms 2.0 and Comms Unplugged, was from a local council. So I'd like to play this video, and Asif, let me know if the sound doesn't play, but it should.
So let me give you a hypothetical scenario. Let's say a comms person who's watching this has just been given a higher budget and obviously wants to see an ROI on that. So what metrics should they be focusing on?
Oh, it's a good one, isn't it? I mean, for me, as you said, I quite like a little bit of vanity metrics just for me to just guide me a little bit as to is something working or not. It has to all be about the outcomes, doesn't it? So if you look at that example about Vicky in the council in West Yorkshire, she spent the day with the customer services team. There's a problem. We've got a bunch of unhappy parents who can't get the information they need on the school admissions page. Let's sort it out. And then the following year when it happened, a massive reduction in calls and complaints to the contact centre. So the outcome was that, you've got, happier parents who've got the information they needed from the web page, You've got happier customer services staff because they've got fewer calls coming in. You've got a savings to the council in terms of reduced call volumes. Probably needed a smaller team the next year to deal with that. So I think almost like the action there was our web page was a bit rubbish, so we've just improved it. We've listened to the customer, we've improved it. And the outcomes then there's 3 or 4, isn't there? So I think for me it's all about the outcomes.
And I found that very interesting how it was impacting, let's say, the school admissions page, and it could be implemented to say, let's say, a university page. How do we know that? How do we garner more students to sign up to our university over another? And therefore, what are the actual feedback and what is the actual implementation to improve it in order to get signups up? And the same can happen with social housing, for example, as well. Let's say you have, your own, new building that you want to get filled with like new people, and that would be amazing. So therefore, what pages would people typically search for on Google in order to find it? But also, how would they actually showcase the information to you to then improve it and then therefore hit your goals and hit your targets of filling that building? So, but also I want to showcase an internal comms equivalent because that was all kind of external comms. Internal comms, for example, implementation onto feedback in the intranet, which has a direct impact on, let's say, the savings made could be reducing staff turnover numbers after the implementation or a feedback tool within the intranet. And then housing associations, which I find very interesting because I've actually read the government social housing white paper. And as part of that, it makes a very strong point as to how housing associations should and have to legally listen and implement feedback from their tenants. And I know that typically housing associations have their own portals in which tenants log into in order to read information. So therefore, implementing it into your portal actually could increase engagement numbers within the portal to then decrease cost of, let's say, digital ads or printed flyers or anything like that. So you're actually saving cost on, different forms of comms outside of the portal. And also the additional savings made could be by staff. So for example, instead of having people, so let's say you hire 10 new people into your team, they all have the same sort of questions directed to the same manager. Instead of it being done that way, the systemic way, like a systemized way of improving that could be by actually having that information within the portal or within the intranet for those staff. So then it actually reduces the manager's time of answering those questions. So for example, if you save 10% of a manager's time and they're on 100K a year, then you've actually saved £10,000. But I don't think managers will share their salaries, but you know what I'm saying. So there is a direct saving on the actual cost of a manager's time as well. And here are just a couple more customers who I like to show this because it's not from me. Like I can speak about this all day and night. But for example, a trade union community, Melantha, who's the head of comms, she said that, they wouldn't have known what would have worked, and what they thought went down well hasn't. And what we didn't think went well worked great. So it's actually shown that they don't know everything. But I think what digital comms is very good at, and managers are very great at, is showing that actually we're not meant to know everything, but just incrementally improving it, even by 1% every month, can lead to huge savings and huge revenue spurts as well. And Daniel, who's the digital comms officer at Pennine, said, by demonstrating that in the past 3 weeks, I was able to make all of these changes to the website, made it easy to prove my worth to management. It's good to be able to have physical evidence to point and say, these are the things we've been able to do the past few weeks. And I liked how he worked on it because he had a traffic light system by having like green for things that we've already implemented into a website, so updated, yellow, we're about, or amber, what we're about to work on, or I've assigned someone else within my team to work on, and then red, we're about to work on it. So action points from that one metric is say hello to the people in customer success and create a feedback loop with them, work with them to do that. Implement a feedback tool onto your website intranet to capture the insights. Customer success documents what is repeatedly mentioned, and why I have in brackets without friction is trying to get people within customer success to, let's say, open up free documents and write the information. Like what do we actually need as digital comms people out of it? We probably need them just to say one word, which is like, okay, someone has called up and said parking appeals. Okay, parking appeals is enough. So that's frictionless, you know, frictionless information that comms people can use quite effectively without them going out of their way and thinking, oh, bloody hell, I now need to write down all of this for the comms people. Anything that, you know, is frictionless, and maybe just send them a box of chocolates after like the first week of implementation, gets them to help you to have this new metric that you can show to the stakeholders, and implementing a content design philosophy as well. Saying no to silos is effectively what we're doing here. We're breaking down the barriers between customer success and comms. We're bringing it together in order to improve the whole systemized way of this metric in reducing calls and the cost behind it. A second metric that I thought is interesting and should be implemented and very underutilized is Thruplay on Facebook videos. So I would assume a lot of people, if not 99% of the people here, have advertised on Facebook and using a video. But with Thruplay, you actually only pay for the videos that are watched completely, or around 97% of it. So if a video is shorter than 15 seconds, it has to be the complete 15 seconds, otherwise you don't pay for that view. Or if it's longer than that, then it's 97% of the video. So if you're showcasing the metrics behind video plays, showcase the total video plays. For example, 20,000 people have watched this video. Then the Thruplays number, which Facebook will show you, is, let's say, 13,000. That's about right. 13,000 people will probably watch the whole thing, or even less potentially. And then the spend behind the Thruplay cost as well. So you're not paying for unnecessary watches if they really just don't watch the video. Behavioural science. So as an economics graduate, I'm definitely involved, and I love behavioural economics and science behind it. Implementing an EAST framework, which is all about easy, attractive, timely, and social. Essentially, just trying to understand what the subconscious biases are of people, and therefore, why don't they do the things that make sense to do, or how can we get them to do something else? Obviously, COVID was a perfect example. How do we get people jabbed, and how do we, you know, kind of like incentivize people who might be anti-vaxxers to get vaxxed and all of that stuff. And I was speaking to Camilla, who's the communications director at Liverpool City Council, and she had a fantastic example. So I'd like to play this one as well.
But we discovered that some people who live in LA just didn't really think lateral flows were for them, variety of reasons. And, you know, if you come along and say, look, I'm from the council, we think it's really important that you give this a go, that's going to fall on deaf ears. We found the most charismatic ice cream seller. This wonderful guy who has been delivering ice creams to generations of families in that community. If anybody is going to trust anybody, they're going to trust him. So he was very kind to us. We gave him a bundle of leaflets. We spoke to him. We advised him on what to say. And as people were queuing up for their ice creams, you remember last summer we had some good weather, didn't we? And even towards the autumn, the weather was quite good. So that was when we got this chappie out and about, and he helped us out with some of our key COVID messaging. So for me, I think it's about understanding what it is you're trying to achieve and what's the most effective way of achieving it. And I think some of us get obsessed with numbers, don't we? So we look at a social media post and we say, wow, look at the reach on this. Our message landed. Did it really? Were people engaged enough? You know, did it really have that impact that you think it did? And I think sometimes we've got to step back from the big figures and just look at the reality often about the message. And sometimes, you know, the message is a hard message, and you might cut it one way and it doesn't deliver. And you need to step back into your meeting and work out how creatively do we get this out there again and actually make it more successful for us.
So yeah, I thought that was like a perfect example of using behavioral science in order to, you know, showcase and share the message of the lateral flows that were going on at that time.
But we discovered that some people who...
There we go. And a framework that I'd like to replace with personas is the jobs to be done framework. Now, this isn't a metric, but I think this should definitely be implemented within every digital comms teams, which is personas only showcase one element, which is, you know, Jane is 45 and likes cats and eats ice cream. It's just like, okay, well, what does that got to do with, you know, the NHS, for example? So essentially it's like, let's use the NHS trust as an example. So in what case would a person hire your service as an NHS trust? An NHS trust is what, you know, a person is hiring. So when, for example, I don't know, when I get ill, I want to have a GP appointment so I can get better. And therefore it's like, that's one job to be done. That's why they hire our service, is because they're ill, they want to get better, so then they can move forward. Or it could be a completely other one where it's like something ultra specific. When I feel a lump, or when I, you know, speak to some, or when I read in the news that XYZ happens, I want to, and therefore it sets you up in this framework of thinking, okay, what is the situation that would actually have to happen within our use cases of our citizens as to why they would want to come to us, and what is their expected outcome, and how can we foresee this in order to set everything up systematically. And this could be the same for housing associations, which would be, when I want to buy a home, no, when I have, you know, 100K plus, I want to buy a home so I can either live in that home or rent it out, whatever. So then you have all of these different use cases to then use. And another one would be for a charity. When it's Christmas, I want to donate so I can feel better about myself. You know, that's just like maybe a random use case, but that is a use case. And therefore, okay, well, how do we figure that out, and how do we slot into that? Then unique URLs for printed materials. If you're doing printed materials, I would highly recommend using unique URLs, so then they can pop it in. So let's say it's something completely different. Like, this is one of our printed materials, the NHS Comms report. Let's say reactandshare.com/comms report. And that's only a URL that's only in printed materials and not on the website. So therefore we can track how many views it gets, and therefore if it's landed correctly, and if people are coming back to the website off of the printed material, versus UTM codes, which is a little bit of code at the end of a link. And then that way you can actually track back if they've come back to the website off of the back of printed materials. And then in Google Analytics, they have this element, which is goals and goals value. So essentially, imagine you're a charity, which some of you guys do work at one, and you say, okay, people typically, if they sign up to our email newsletter, they're not going to donate right now. But over time, we've calculated that the average donation from people who sign up to our email newsletter is higher than others. And they would, 50% of people sign up to our email newsletter donate £200 at Christmas. So then you can set up a goal, which is, the goal is to get them to sign up. So that would be the end goal, which is like sign up. That's the URL ending. And then you can assign a goal value, which is £100. So let's say £100 because it's 50% of them, you know, instead of 200, it's 50. So then it's £100 per person. And then every time someone signs up to the email newsletter, you can say, okay, they're actually worth £100 because on average they donate, you know, half of them donate £200 at Christmas. So then that way, you know what the actual value is, and then you can show that to stakeholders. So for example, instead of saying we have 5,000 new people signed up to our email newsletter this month, you can say, actually, in terms of the potential value or the potential donations, this is how much they're worth. And this can be applied to housing associations as well. So then if you could lead them into a form, and then the form ends with like a thanks page, so which you say, thank you for contacting us at, you know, XYZ Housing Association will be in contact with you soon it's probably worth, you know, a little bit of like money in terms of like for the organization, even though it's, you know, obviously not a social housing, it's not for profit. So, but essentially you can set up that within Google Analytics, which I think is very useful. So ultimately, the funnel would be, you know, the reach and impressions, which everyone kind of like showcases within digital comms reports. And I've seen literally over 50 now, and primarily within the NHS Trust, because I was one of the judges for the NHS Awards for the digital comms section. So I've seen all of their dashboards, which is very interesting. Through to the page, web page views, and then into in real life action. You know, what do we actually want these people to do? How do we adopt them into, let's say, getting a flu jab, to signing up, to seeing new building being built, to donating at our charity, to visiting our NHS Trust when they have XYZ symptoms, whatever. And then the impact evaluation after that. So mix of qualitative and quantitative is an absolute winner. Like I started off this conversation or this talk, bounce rate doesn't automatically mean people have found what they're looking for. And also impressions doesn't automatically mean that the message was received. I'd highly recommend that you screenshot this, because I want everyone to remember this. If you don't show it, your boss won't know it, which is very true. And the metrics behind some of the ones that I've shown you shows like, you know, a broader thinking and a more in line thinking with, you know, what your boss would typically want to see and what they actually don't even know. So you can actually showcase the information that they would wish they had seen. So how do you report it to stakeholders? And I know that we're coming up to time, so I'm going to be quick. 3-year plans are dead. These are the 4 steps that I highly recommend in how to implement this sort of metrics to your stakeholders. Step 1, finding out what the broader organization-wide objective is for this year, or however long that they work on it. And therefore, interlink when you come to step 2, your comms strategy or digital comms strategy in line with what the organization-wide objective is. Always keep that focus there, because you'll be speaking their language. You'll be speaking the language of the stakeholders, and they will understand why you're doing what you're doing. So for example, if you're doing a PR push, why is comms doing a PR push? They would think, you know, why are they doing that? Okay, it's in line with the wider objective, and therefore the metrics always like link back in. Setting smart objectives for each, who owns what project. And then the step 4 is, I would say, the most important, which is to review the strategy every 3 months to deem if it's fit for purpose. If it's not fit for purpose, just change it. Just, you know, really just change it. And then the weekly dashboard overview, I think have your internal team, so the team that you work with on a daily basis, to keep that motivation up, to showcase the numbers, to show the impact that they're having, and therefore you keep that momentum, and also to report the findings monthly and quarterly to senior team. So senior team actually values what you're doing within your team. They see the numbers, and they cannot fight the data, which is, you know, that point there. They cannot fight the data when you show them it, and it strengthens everything. And one of the points that I want to relay, which is a point that I was mentioning with some friends, is remove yourself from the findings as much as possible. So do not say, you know, if you have like pieces of feedback from, let's say, potential people who want social housing, and they say, oh, I hate this housing association because they don't like me and blah, blah, blah. Then if you want to relay, let's say, very valid feedback or anything that's actually actionable, you never say, oh, we think, or oh, the comms team think. You remove yourself, so you put yourself at arm's length. And any quotes of feedback, I would use like a stock image of someone else's face, or if they're willing to put their face to their quote, then use that. Because that way it's like the digital comms team is just purely here to stay focused on the data, to use it, to implement it into very effective comms. And it's not personal. It's not personal, sweetheart. You know, like some bosses take it very personally. So do not be the messenger that they shoot. We do not want them to shoot the messenger. So remove yourself and keep as far away from that sort of like findings as possible, and keep it data orientated. Smart work and data makes you indispensable. So there was a very good talk yesterday about, how to future-proof your job within comms. And I generally feel like smart work and data makes a person absolutely indispensable. And if you're the person who comes to the senior management or the stakeholders showcasing this level of information and how comms directly links to either saving money, making money, or making people within your community more engaged and happy, then I just don't see how they would not want to keep you for love nor money. And therefore, it also opens up the market, the job market for you as well, because not only are you an excellent comms person, but also you're strategically thinking about the metrics behind exactly what you're doing, why it works, and therefore the people above you who don't really understand comms speaking in the language that they do understand. And funnily enough, I had this message over LinkedIn just yesterday. So I was like this morning quickly trying to put it into the presentation, which a person had told me I had recently had a job interview and used some research from the comms survey report or survey that I had shown earlier in the presentation, and he had got the job. So I was very happy with that. And he told me that he was utilizing loads of the insights and the information as part of the NHS comms report to bolster the fact that it wasn't just his opinion, but actually it was just pure data. So utilizing data in order to get a job as well, which was awesome, made me very happy. So yeah, please screenshot this page because I'm about to change the slides. But if you would like, as a CommsHero exclusive, because this is the first talk that I've done at CommsHero, we're giving away a free trial of React and Share worth £500 to literally everyone on this call. And also we're so thankful to be a sponsor at CommsHero as well. And also follow me on Twitter because I tweet a lot of crap and I like people who engage with it. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation. Did you find it insightful? And hopefully see you for a free trial, and I'm open to questions.
Excellent. Hayat, that was fantastic. Loads of, first of all, can we get a massive round of emoji love for Hayat? Fantastic presentation. There's a couple of comments in the chat, which I'm going to read out and put up on screen. So from Baz, loved your presentation, Hayat. Jules Loveland, great advice. Danielle Taylor, amazing. Sarah, very insightful. So lots of positive stuff and great presentation from Sharon at Red Kite. So if you've got any questions for Hayat while she's here for the next 5 minutes or so, please drop them in the Q&A tab and I'll say them over the live stream. But just to kick off, Hayat, I've got a question for you, but before I do, I just want to let you know I've scrapped my 3-year plan now. So thank you for that. Took me months of hard work. It's gone. So your data, what type of person do you need to be, or do you need to have in your comms team who loves data? And is it just geeks or nerds? Apologies, there's no apologies actually, because they're important. Or are these new cool kids of comms now?
I would say that trying to get in a person who is like the geek or the nerd or the data lover is probably one way to go about it. But I would say it's just better for you if you start to learn how to implement it and also just to have chats with people. I think the one thing that I found from listening to other people who are in digital comms is by speaking to people without the silos and in different departments, they've actually found a new love and a new appreciation for data that they never knew that they had. And the one thing that data does is it strengthens your argument whenever it comes to, let's say, budget, or when it comes to hiring someone, or when it comes to firing someone within your team. So having that power, I would say, is just like an awesome superpower. And I know it's CommsHero, so an awesome superpower for everyone to have. So don't worry about trying to get someone in who loves it, but try and evoke that within yourself, because it will make you not only indispensable within the jobs market, but also it makes you indispensable within the wider team and organization.
Excellent. And a few more comments have flown in from Ed Thomas. Everyone who works in comms is a cool kid. So apologies to all you non-data people.
Rude.
If you've got any more, if you've got any more questions for Hayat, don't forget there's the free trial worth £500, so not to be scoffed at. So you're getting swag prizes, the whole shooting match from this, and free trials of React and Share. So there's no other questions that have come through as yet, but I think there's lots of stuff for people to take away. The session is going to be available on replay. So a few more emojis before Hayat goes, and I've got some messages to give out as well. And so don't forget, as well as the free offer that Hayat's just given you, we've got prizes. So take photos of yourself on networking on tables or pets, and there's swag, there's CommsHero swag, there's pets at home vouchers. We've got a daily planner. This is highly coveted, this one. Everybody wants to win that. We have, of course, the tools as a trade, your Sharpies. So all you've got to do is take a picture and post it on social. All people attending this event should be good enough to do that. So go and do that, and there's prizes up for grabs, and we'll announce those in Anik's intro as chair every morning. As I said, this will be on replay. Thank you very much, Hayat. We're going to be back at 11:15 for the next session, which is Graham Park, a fireside chat. So Amy Nettleton gets the honor of interviewing Graham Park, who's going to share with us his kind of 30 years. How do you stay current and trendy in lots of comms lessons to be learned from a world-renowned DJ there. So thank you very much, Hayat. Lots of emojis before we dash off, and hope you've all enjoyed that session. Thank you.
Thank you.